Okay, good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to today's webinar entitled Teach Them and They Will Walk, Innovations in Pedestrian Safety Education. My name is Wallace Beaton, and I'm the Manager of Community Engagement and Capacity for Ontario Active School Travel, a program of Green Communities Canada. Assisting me on today's webinar is Ontario Active School Travel's Program Director, Kate Berry, and Selena Churro, our Program Coordinator. Green Communities Canada is a national association of local organizations working from the ground up for transformative change in areas like zero waste, eco-efficient homes and businesses, active transportation, and green infrastructure. We have been the lead organization promoting active school travel in Ontario since 1996. We do this through on-the-ground programming, training, resources, events, research, and advocacy. The goal of the Ontario Active School Travel Program is to make walking, cycling, and other forms of active and sustainable transportation the norm for school trips. To help us reach that goal, the Ontario government has provided green communities with $3.5 million between October 2017 and August 2020 to take active school travel to the next level across the province. This is allowing us to provide support for walk and wheel to school initiatives in a record-setting 50 communities in Ontario. Before we go further, we're going to bring up a quick pop-up poll on the screen and ask you to indicate what sector you work in. This is being done strictly for evaluation purposes. Selena, can you bring up the poll?
Hi there, Wallace. One moment, please.
I've got it, Selena. I'll launch
Okay,
it now.
perfect.
Yep. So everyone should see the poll on their screen now. And if you could just provide your answer very quickly. Looks like we've got a fairly good cross-section of different sectors represented on the webinar today. I'm going to give everybody another 15 seconds or so. Still got a few answers coming in.
Hi, Wallace, it's Kate.
Yeah, hi, Kate.
Hello, you'll need to capture the results. We're not able to see them.
Okay, I'll do that right now. So just give everyone a moment.
Oh yeah, I think they're talking.
Great. Okay, thanks everybody for that.
I have headphones if you want.
And I'm just letting everybody have a look so you can get an idea of the really good cross-section of folks we have on the webinar today. So here is our agenda for the webinar. We will be keeping everyone on mute throughout the webinar. If you have any technical issues or problems, please use the chat box to notify us. The webinar is being recorded and you will receive an email with the slides and recording in the near future. There will be 3 presentations in the order shown on the screen, followed by a question and answer period. During the presentations, we encourage you to type your questions into the chat box and send to everyone. We'll track them and work through them together during the Q&A period. The webinar will officially end after 1 hour at 2 p.m. Eastern. However, our presenters have agreed to remain online to continue answering questions and participating in the conversation should there be a need. So now let's dive in. Today's webinar is entitled Teach Them and They Will Walk, Innovations in Pedestrian Safety Education. While many communities already offer some form of cycling safety training, such as bike rodeos, and there are well-established resources like Can Bike for Kids to draw on for curriculum, programs that teach children how to safely navigate our streets on foot are not nearly as widespread. Today's webinar has been developed as an opportunity to present current and emerging resources and best practices in pedestrian safety education. It includes presentations outlining 3 different initiatives currently offered in Ontario, and our speakers will also share some of their lessons learned and other recommendations for those who are looking to start their own local program. And here are our presenters this afternoon, and I wanted to start out by thanking all of them for committing time and energy to preparing their presentations and participating in our webinar. It's really great to have them with us. So we'll be starting with Tara MacDaniel from London. Tara is a public health nurse at the Middlesex-London Health Unit, where she is program lead for road safety and active transportation. In 2018-19, Tara served as co-chair of the Elgin, St. Thomas, London, Middlesex, and Oxford, ELMO for short, Active and Safe Routes to School Steering Committee. Prior to that, Tara supported several school communities in implementing school travel plans and facilitated events and activities promoting active and safe school travel among elementary age students. From Waterloo, we have 2 co-presenters this afternoon. The first is Annette Collins. Annette is a registered nurse with over 25 years of public health experience. Currently, part of her work as a public health nurse with the Region of Waterloo's Public Health and Emergency Services focuses on road safety for children and youth. And she'll be joined by Leslie Maxwell with Student Transportation Services of Waterloo Region, where Leslie is the School Travel Planning Supervisor, and her position is cooperatively funded by 2 school boards and 3 municipalities with a focus on reducing traffic at schools and making active school travel an easier choice for families. Leslie has worked on AST in various roles for over 15 years. And last but not least, we'd like to welcome Kelly Banks. Kelly has over 15 years of customer-focused volunteer, employee, and program management experience building and supporting sustainable community-based programs. As program manager for school zone safety at the Ottawa Safety Council, Kelly provides managerial support, strategic guidance, and oversight to the Adult Crossing Guard, Walking School Bus, WalkSafe, and CycleSafe programs, helping to ensure that Ottawa's children get to and from school safely every day. Great, so our first presentation will be from Tara MacDaniel. Tara, I'm going to turn over control of the screen so that you can bring your slides online. Hi, Tara. Are you able to start sharing your screen?
Hi, Wallace. It should be sharing now. Do you have it?
I'm seeing someone's camera in a very dark space.
Okay.
Selena or Kate, can you confirm if Tara's slides are appearing?
Oh, we can see them now.
You see them now?
Yeah.
Okay,
Yes,
here we
yes, we
go.
do.
Okay, perfect. Okay, so I'll begin. So thank you very much, Wallace. So good afternoon, everyone, and thank you for this opportunity to share some of the resources created by the ELMO Active and Safe Routes to School partnership. My goal is to provide a brief overview of the resources and discuss how these are being delivered in elementary schools today. Just to note, I will often make reference to Active and Safe Routes to School as ACERTS for short throughout my presentation. ELMO ACERTS is a partnership comprised of organizations across the cities of St. Thomas and London and includes the counties of Elgin, Middlesex, and Oxford. As you can see, some of the partners involved on this slide. The mission of this committee is to work towards the improvement of children's health, safety, and our environment by removing barriers and encouraging safe, active school travel. We use comprehensive health promotion strategies that address engagement, education, engineering, enforcement, equity, and evaluation. Sorry, I'm just going to see if I can move this out of the way. There we go. To begin, you can access the Active and Safe Routes to School website at activesaferoutes.ca. There are 2 spots where you can select resources, which will lead you to our safety presentations for students. In this section, you will find a list of resources for you to explore and incorporate into educational lessons, campaigns, or social media messaging. The resources were developed for different users, such as teachers, community partners, public health professionals, and parents, which are all encouraged to access and share. For this webinar, my specific focus is on our student presentations for students, which you can see in the drop-down menu highlighted with the yellow box. The safety presentations for students were created for elementary school-age children to increase knowledge and skill development for active school travel. Information includes the different modes students use, such as walking, cycling, and riding the bus. The term wheeling is used to represent any mode where wheels are used for active transportation, for example, cycling, rollerblading, skateboarding, etc. The creation of resources has been a multi-sectoral collaboration between partners who provide expertise, resources, in-kind and financial support to support the development of various projects. This slide is not meant for you to read clearly, but it's just to show you what the page looks like. These are the topic areas presented on our webpage. Options can be chosen based on the determined needs of the individual school community. For example, pedestrian crossovers and roundabouts are not installed in all neighborhoods, but for those that do have them, choosing these resources for education would be most appropriate. Also, if a school has a high population of bus students, you may choose to provide education on bus safety and pedestrian safety in general while encouraging active travel to their bus stop. Overall, having knowledge about this community where students travel from is helpful. Working with school champions to learn about the needs of the students for customizing teaching plans is recommended to achieve the most impact for increased capacity and confidence for active school travel. One of our earlier developed resources is a Lego stop motion video developed in partnership with Active and Safe Routes to School and the London Middlesex Road Safety Committee, which was created to teach parents and children how to cross the road safely at traffic lights. The idea for a Lego video was adopted from a London high school student named AJ, who won first place for his Lego stop motion video in a distracted driving contest in 2015. His submission also led to receive an MTO Student Achievement Award. Since then, we were able to work with AJ to produce 2 more videos. Along with the video is an instructional coloring sheet for students, which was created for either to use in class or to take home. Other resources we have on our website are 2 safety presentations, one created for kindergarten to grade 3 and one for grade 4 to 8. Included is a presentation instructor page on how to prepare for the presentation, what is needed, setup requirements, and additional supplementary information to eliminate potential technological difficulties at the time of setting up. For example, a computer needs to be set to enable media content to access the videos. This should be done ahead of time. Valuable elements about this resource is the fact that they are downloadable and they are created so the user can edit them. So for example, the presentation can be customized to include the facilitator's name as well as the school's name. It can also be adapted by removing slides that do not apply to the learning needs of the students. For example, a presenter could choose not to present on cycling or pedestrian crossovers, depending on the area of focus for that school. Age-appropriate language and images are used to align with the student audience, and information can be delivered in different formats. So you can use this presentation in a classroom, at assembly, or at an event that the school may be having. The presentations are engaging with the use of prompting questions, visuals, embedded videos, and a game at the end to summarize knowledge gained. And lastly, it provides students with a fun learning experience. Some highlights of the presentation slides include defining what is active transportation and the benefits, general tips on how to prepare for walking outdoors, and walking safety tips. Also, we have information on biking and helmet safety. These are just a few of the many slides in the presentation. Here we have an example of a bus safety education slide. And to the right is an example of one of our Lego stop motion videos embedded in the presentation. This is an image of the pedestrian safer journey video and quiz, which is targeted to the kindergarten to grade 3 age group. And this is developed by the Federal Highway of Administration. This video provides a review of pedestrian safety. Here is an image of the Jeopardy Rocks pedestrian safety game created for students in grade 4 to 8. It is interactive, it requires teamwork, and has proven to be a fun way to learn. The game can be played in teams, and students can receive a prize for participating, such as receiving an A-Certs pencil. Teams pick a healthy food item to represent their team, and they can pick from 3 of the categories, which are bus safety, wheeling safety, and walking safety. The pedestrian crossover education includes resources that were developed after PXOs were approved for installation in London. Posters, handouts, a coloring page activity, school announcements, and newsletter templates can all be found on our website. The education focuses on the responsibility of drivers, pedestrians, and cyclists, and includes the enforcement consequences of not following the law. Additional versions of the Lego stop motion videos were developed titled Crossing Safely at Pedestrian Crossovers and Driving Safely at Pedestrian Crossovers, which you see here on the slide. To date, the driving safety at pedestrian crossovers has over 23,000 views and is also available in French. To the right of the slide, you can see a PXO demonstration resource made by a public health nurse used to engage students and parents in learning how to use a PXO by actively demonstrating the role of a pedestrian, cyclist, and driver. This interactive resource works great for engaging the community at events. Resources for roundabouts were added last year when a need for clarification on how to navigate roundabouts was discovered during a school travel planning walkabout audit. They were created in collaboration with the London Middlesex Road Safety Committee to promote the safe use of roundabouts as a pedestrian, a wheeler, or a driver. A comprehensive toolkit was developed to facilitate planning educational campaigns, and examples within this resource are a video with the A-Certs and the London Middlesex Road Safety Committee mascot, Tony the Streetwise Cat. Safety presentations for parents created with our municipal partners, as well as announcements and newsletters for communication to students and parents. Here are some more examples of the resources in the toolkit. And there's activities to enhance learning, which are also found there. Examples of these would be a coloring page, an I Spy and Spot the Hazards activity sheet. And the activities within the toolkit are connected to the Ontario Health and Physical Education curriculum. Now I'll briefly explain our delivery model. So a flagship program of A-Certs is school travel planning. Schools that commit to this program receive support from the public health nurses or school travel planners from the Southwestern Student Transportation Services to deliver the program. The menu of resources provides several strategies for increasing active transportation. Usually in this scenario, the nurse or the school travel planner works closely with the school champions to facilitate educational events and activities. Where school is not ready or do not have the capacity to commit to a formal school travel planning process, teachers, administration, and parents are encouraged to use the resources in the capacity they are able. Many of our resources were created as a grab-and-go model, so school staff and parents can independently and readily engage in school activities on their own schedules as it fits with other initiatives already planned in their school. Over the years, we have always welcomed feedback, and so here are some of the lessons learned. So schools certainly do like ready-to-go resources. Promotion of ACERT's resources is ongoing because the website is always updating the resources, and certainly the champions that we work with in schools change, so we always have to refamiliarize the schools with the resources on the website. Education is always important to align with new infrastructure in the area. Educational activities for students should be fun. Scooters and skateboards are popular now, so our resources now reflect this. And presentations we have found do work better in smaller groups, so that would be at events or classrooms versus using the presentation in an assembly format if there's a huge population within that age group. To contact a co-chair of the ACERTS committee, provided is the email info@activesaferoutes.ca, and for sharing on social media or to follow the work of ACERTS, their Twitter and Instagram handles are provided as well. Thank you very much.
Great, thank you, Tara. And as we transition now over to the presentation from Waterloo Region, just a reminder to use the chat box for any questions or also to share any comments. Perhaps you also have some pedestrian safety activities occurring in your own community, and feel free to tell us about that in the chat box. So I'm going to turn things over now to Annette and Leslie from Waterloo Region.
Hi there. Thank you for giving us the opportunity to talk about this exciting new program that we've launched here in Waterloo Region. I just want to double check that everyone can see our slides.
Yes, we can, Annette.
Okay, great. Thank you. Okay. This experiential learning program is designed to increase pedestrian safety knowledge and skills in children in grades 3 and 4. The need for additional pedestrian safety education was identified by a number of community representatives who work in the area of children's safety and road safety education. We felt that there was a need and a gap in the community for specifically addressing the skill development of elementary children. So contributors included representatives from Cycling into the Future, Region of Waterloo Public Health and Emergency Services, Region of Waterloo's Transportation Division, Student Transportation of Waterloo Services of Waterloo Region, Waterloo Region Walking School Bus Program, which is a program of the Canadian Cancer Society, Waterloo Region Children's Safety Village, as well as the Waterloo Regional Block Parent Program. We should note, though, that the intent of this program is not to create experts in navigating streets as pedestrians. We recognize that parents and caregivers are the ultimate decision makers, determining when their children are ready to walk safely to school or other destinations. During our initial discussions, we discussed what programs already existed and where we could potentially tap into additional resources, or as well where there were gaps. We were inspired by the success of an existing local cycling safety program for the grade 5 and 6 level. And as a result, we invited representatives from that organization to join our planning group, and we learned very much from their struggles and successes along the way. We also identified grades 3 and 4 as the ideal group for us to reach with this program, because we felt that developmentally these children are ready to walk some places on their own. Went to one too far. There we go. During our initial visioning and planning meetings, we identified a number of principles that acknowledged and were supported by the number of organizational mandates around the table. Foundational to our program are the principles that anyone who uses a sidewalk is a pedestrian, and this includes those walking using small wheeled devices like scooters, rollerblades, skateboards, tricycles, and those folks who are using wheelchairs and other mobility devices. We do not include people using bicycles within this definition. We also recognize that anyone who uses active transportation when they're young is more likely to continue that habit when they are older. We also recognize that active transportation helps people meet their daily physical activity recommendations, and that initiatives within schools like healthy schools, daily physical activity, eco schools, and school travel planning, as well as other classroom learning experiences, can support road safety knowledge acquisition and skill development. We also felt that learning pedestrian safety skills in middle childhood provides a really good foundation for developing additional road safety skills as both cyclists and motorists as the children grew older. Guiding us along the way as well, as we were planning our program, we referred heavily to the Ontario Health and Physical Education curriculum. And the grade 3 and grade 4 healthy living learning expectations were instrumental in helping us design our learning activities. And as we developed the program components, we used SEDARA's principles for school road safety education as a guide. Sidewalk Smarts has incorporated 10 of these principles with the view that the remaining 6 principles are or can be addressed through a comprehensive strategy that includes many other programs and activities. So of our program components, we wanted to ensure that we had a multiple learning styles represented learning strategies so that students could be engaged along the way, depending on what their preferred learning style was. The introductory classroom learning component is an optional component for teachers. Teachers guide classroom discussions to help set the tone and start to build a collective mindset about the value of walking and active transportation. They're encouraged to talk about who are pedestrians, why walk or use active transportation, what are the benefits of walking and using active transportation, and where do people go when they are walking or traveling actively. 2 sessions make up our experiential learning component, and both of these sessions are led by trained instructors. In the first part, students take part in a number of hands-on learning activities in a classroom setting, while the second part involves instructors taking students in small groups outdoors to the pedestrian environment in the school neighborhood. And like the introductory classroom discussions, the follow-on classroom learning is optional. It's intended to reinforce what students have already learned with the trained instructors and help students gain a deeper understanding of some of the key concepts that taught during our program. And as I've mentioned, parents play a key role in deciding if and when a child can walk independently to school or other places in their community. As such, our program involves parent engagement through the provision of resources to reinforce the learning at home and also foster positive attitudes within the family setting. Our program resources include quite a number of pieces. All of our instructors are provided with a comprehensive instructor manual. The manual includes all information needed to run the program in a school. It also includes a reference guide that compiles information about different signs and signals pedestrians may see, as well as information about various locations where pedestrians may need to walk or cross traffic. A separate guide is intended for those who train instructors for Sidewalk Smarts and lays out how the training should be organized. As mentioned in the previous slide, teachers are provided 2 different resources. Whether or not they choose to incorporate these additional learning activities into other classroom subjects is completely voluntary. The first resource provides an overview of the introductory discussion, while the second resource provides suggestions for road safety learning activities in other subjects. For example, we've included a science lesson that has students investigating how colors are visible under varying light conditions. Both of these resources we did have reviewed by a retired teacher, and their feedback was incorporated. The main resource for parents is our passport. It provides an outline of the individual skills parents can practice with their children to reinforce what they learned in the classroom and while on the roadside. It's hoped that the passport will allow parents to assess when their children are ready to increase the amount of independence they have traveling to different destinations. For each skill, parents can assess which stage their child is at, whether their child can tell them about the skill, whether they can perform the skill, and whether they can perform the skill all the time. So a bit about the experiential learning. In the classroom, it's divided into a number of components, which help students identify risks associated with being a pedestrian and help to build an understanding of how to use various traffic structures in the community. After a large group discussion about appropriate clothing and footwear and how to minimize distractions, students are broken up into smaller groups. In their small groups, they rotate among 3 stations designed to use different learning activities to talk about where to walk, where to cross, and making decisions based on different locations and a number of factors that could modify these decisions. Such modifiers we include are weather-related hazards, sightline hazards, walking in a group, animals in their path, light conditions, and distractions. While out on the roadside, this learning portion of the program helps students to identify and assess the pedestrian safety risk within their own school neighborhood, identify strategies of how to be safer pedestrians in their school neighborhood, and an opportunity to practice some of the pedestrian safety behaviors covered during the classroom portion. Mapped routes in the school neighborhood are provided by Student Transportation Services. These maps identify a round-trip walking route of approximately 800 to 1,000 meters in length. They also identify locations where groups can stop, discuss, and use various specialized infrastructure, things like roundabouts, LRT crossings, pedestrian crossovers, and pedestrian islands. Instructors are expected to pre-walk the routes before the session to ensure the route is appropriate and does not have any conditions that would make it unsafe for the group to travel along. Each group includes one trained instructor plus one additional adult for supervision, usually no more than 8 students maximum in each group. The additional adults walk at the back of the group and encourage students to stay together and address any behavior issues that may arise. They also support students crossing the road in smaller groups under the guidance of the trained instructor. And for those students who are not able to participate in the roadside learning, teachers are provided with a list of alternate activities that can be done back at the school. And now I'll turn things over to Leslie, who will talk more about the administrative side of the program.
Thanks, Annette. I'm sure many of you are asking yourselves just how much all of this might cost. And so I want to talk a little bit about the funding model that we've landed upon so far. So in our pre-planning stages, we took a look at the expected costs, and we estimated that it would cost about $15 per student. In our first pilot, we didn't worry about that cost so much because we were only going to offer it to 2 schools as we sort of figured out the best model for the in-class portion, you know, testing the different games and such that we tried in the classes. So that model was really only at 2 schools, and we partnered with public health and with the other partners around the table. We all kind of pitched in some in-kind activities and funding. Most of the cash funding came from STSWR in the form of materials and coordination. That pilot led us to our pilot number B, which we've rolled out this fall. So we offered the pedestrian training, Sidewalk Smarts, to 24 schools that had worked with us in some significant way through school travel planning. So we were ready to roll it out to 24 sessions of 30 students, and which meant that we needed to make sure that we could cover about $11,000 worth of funding. In order to do that, we decided that we would ask parents for one portion of that funding. And in fact, we wanted to insist on parents being partly responsible for the funding because we knew that that would cause them to ask deeper questions about the program. We wanted them to understand what was happening in the classroom and to be familiar with it. The silver lining of that is that parents would probably poke a lot of holes in the program and help us produce something that was really, really strong. They would have a lot of questions. So we depended on parents for roughly $5 each, or we asked for $5 per student. And then public health helped to support the startup costs with providing learning resources, and they covered the cost of the lead instructor. And then STSWR sort of picked up all the extra costs of recruitment, training of trainers, the additional instructors that we had in the classrooms, and any other materials that might have popped up as time went on. For the delivery of the program, we depended very heavily on our partners again, and in particular one partner that's Cycling into the Future. This is the partner who has the really strong cycling program already. And so we built our program to be delivered in the months that Cycling into the Future was not busy, so that we could potentially lean upon their instructors. From the beginning, STSWR took the lead in recruitment. So we wanted to hire one strong lead instructor and 7 support instructors that could help in the classroom and on the street side. STSWR took on the creation of a job posting and the posting of that job on various at various venues. Pardon me. We took on the job of creating the interview questions and organizing the interviews, and we had some support from Cycling into the Future in actually conducting the interviews, so that the decisions for our hires were kind of a cooperative effort. And we also created a scoring rubric in order that each of the candidates was scored fairly and with equity in mind. STSWR also led the training in that after we developed the beautiful manual for the trainers, we used that manual to create a half-day training session. That was also supported by Public Health, who helped to deliver the training in the class. And so that half day was organized such that we had half of the project in the classroom and half of the day was, or a quarter of the day was spent street side, just as our students would be spending. So we wanted it to be very experiential as well. And in fact, we expanded that insofar as to have the new instructors lead each other through the different sessions, so that they were learning how to deliver the model to the students by delivering it to each other. Finally, STSWR led the registration process for the schools as well. We promoted it to schools that were already working with us in school travel planning, as I had mentioned. Those schools were able to choose from the available dates. We did a lot of running around coordinating those dates and trying to figure out which instructors could be available when, and which schools could run at which time. We gave them a pretty large window from November to the end of February to choose from, and we wanted to use March as sort of a redo date for any schools that might have been canceled due to weather. We didn't really have in mind how job action would impact that, and I'll talk about that a little bit later. Then as far as the staffing goes, we did hand the reins over to Cycling into the Future. So we're treating this as a third-party sort of fee-for-service project now. And while STSWR is responsible for paying for this program, we are paying Cycling into the Future to actually manage the staffing. So they are the ones who are figuring out which individual instructors can be in each class session. And we had hoped to have enough staff for them in order to deliver up to 4 sessions per day, either 4 sessions in one school or to split that between 2 schools by having two teams of instructors, essentially. So we thought that the 8 people that we had hired would be able to manage that. And with some backup from Cycling into the Future additional trainers. And then finally for supervision, we lean on the very strong lead instructor that we hired from Cycling into the Future, who was very well-versed in this kind of programming by doing the same sort of work for Cycling into the Future. And she was able to lean then on the comprehensive manual to answer any questions for her instructors, and she connects with us quite often to ensure that her answers are correct, and that anything that comes up outside of what we could have expected is answered in collaboration together.
Hi, Leslie.
Yep.
Well, it's just a quick time check. You've got about 3 minutes left.
Okay, we got you. We can do this. The program has run fairly well through November, December, and January. Into January, of course, we hit job action, and so we started to take a look at what we had learned along the way so far, and we've made a few little adjustments, but in essence, our lessons learned will help us to refine this project for next year. So in the recruitment realm of things, we realized that we need to make the schedule much more predictable for our instructors, because even though we had 8 to choose from, their availability is very sporadic because they don't know which days to count on having work for. So next year we're looking at not giving schools choice. We want to book the schools tightly together to provide a more predictable work schedule for those instructors. We also realized that we needed to be very clear about the school day hours that are required, because we ended up recruiting some students from the fire program nearby, and they were not available at all during the day. They thought they would be, but they were not. In the area of training, we realized the trainers have been asking, or had identified, that they needed more time in the program or in the classroom with us to learn a greater familiarity with the program and more practice on the streets. So we're really looking forward to expanding our training to be a full day, probably in 2 half-day sessions, to cover more ground with them. Registration, we can be flexible with schools next year, but we are going to give schools far less choice. We're going to make it a denser schedule. And then as far as the instructor scheduling goes, we realized very early in the program that we needed an additional instructor to be a floater. We tested it with just 3 people in the classroom. Definitely need a floater who can keep their eye on the time and kind of take care of any behavioral issues. And we moved our sessions from 75 minutes per session down to 60-minute sessions. And that was really because the instructors identified that they could get through the material that quickly. So, and there was a lot of dead time with the students. So we can condense it that way. And that actually allows us to offer more sessions per day as well with one single team. So we will be able to provide a better schedule for those instructors as well that way. And finally, we also want to make sure that we have enough supervisors from within the school, the volunteer parents and teachers, so on, who had been following or had been attending the roadside sessions as well. We need them; they are essential. On the funding end, we found out that schools did not actually ask parents for funds. They were just paying for it out of their school budgets. So we were not really achieving what we wanted to with the connection with the parents. The schools were reticent to do that. So we are seeking a different model that won't ask any money from parents or from schools, because we found that that was a stopper for some schools who needed sponsors. So on that end, we asked around and we found out that credit unions do want to help those schools. So we found some sponsors for them, and that's a lead for us for maybe growing a bigger sponsor who would be responsible for helping us to deliver the program to all schools next year. And also municipalities have found or shown more interest in supporting this program because it's a tangible product than some of the other things that we've taken to them. So, so there's some good possibilities there as well for additional funding next year. I'll quickly run through. We did ask our schools how well it went, and I do have my eye on the time, Wallace.
Thank you.
And they said that we were very effective in reaching our goals with introducing active transportation, and the material we were delivering is relevant to their grade level by 86%. So that leaves a little margin for improvement in both of those categories. Every single one of the schools said that they would participate again. And you can read some of these comments here that have been positive and have been good constructive criticism for us to grow our project for next year. So in the next, like as far as that sustained funding goes, I've sort of run through all of that already. We will be looking to credit unions, municipalities, STSWR, of course, and we'll be looking to see if we can create a more for-profit model like Intertrain provides for schools here in their bus evacuation training. So yep, I think I've run through all of the different adaptations that we're going to be looking at next year. And here is our contact information if you have further questions. We will look at the chat now as the next presentation proceeds to see what we can answer there, but otherwise we'll wait for other questions at the end of the show. Thank you.
Great. Thank you, Leslie, and thank you, Annette. I'll ask you now to unshare. Thanks. And I'm going to invite Kelly Banks to bring her presentation online. She's going to talk to you about some of the great pedestrian safety education initiatives that have been happening in Ottawa.
All right.
So over to you,
can everyone
Kelly.
see that?
Yes,
Great.
you're good.
Can you
You're
hear
good to
me and
go.
see that?
Yes, we
Okay,
can.
wonderful. All right. Thank you so much, Wallace, for allowing us this opportunity to showcase some of the great success we've been having with our WalkSafe program in recent years. So just to give everyone just a quick background, the Ottawa Safety Council, we're a nonprofit in the Ottawa area that focuses on road safety, programs, services, awareness campaigns, advocacy, and a large portion of our programs are actually focused on school zone safety. So we do have a very good relationship with the City of Ottawa. We run their crossing guard program for them, 240 guards across the city that we manage on a daily basis. And then we have a walking school bus program, a cycling education program, and then what I'm here to talk about is our WalkSafe program. So the WalkSafe program is a partnership between the City of Ottawa and the Ottawa Safety Council. We've been partnering them with the city for about a decade now, and over that decade, it hasn't always been the most successful of programs that we've offered. We tried many different ways of delivering it. Some presenters previous to me mentioned, assembly style doesn't work, and then we've tried having full-time employees delivering it in the schools, part-time employees, but we really landed on a model in 2015 that seemed to work for us delivery-wise, having instructors, part-time instructors going out into the schools, which I'll talk a little bit more about later. But so 2015, we got that under control in terms of being able to fulfill on actually delivering the program in the schools. And then in 2017, we sat down and we took a really good look at the content and realized that it needed to be revamped. So some of the goals of our WalkSafe program here in Ottawa are we really want it to be hands-on, experiential, and age-appropriate. So we have 4 different presentations that are tailored to the different age groups, JKSK, 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5, 6, based around their level of understanding of different sort of abstract concepts, as well as how much they're actually walking on their own and sharing the roads. We wanted the concepts to be learned in the classroom, but easily translatable into the real world. So what we tried to do for the especially the younger grades was bring the outdoor experience into the classroom where they could practice. Obviously fun and engaging in order to keep students' attention and make sure that they retain some of the information that they've learned. And then we wanted to add value in terms of tying the program to the curriculum so that teachers were having us into their classroom, but they were also checking off curriculum requirements that they were responsible, as well as providing retention activities so that we were in there, we delivered the presentation, but that there was ongoing practice happening afterwards to ensure that students retained the important concepts. A few other sort of focuses of the program were to prepare students for the realities that they're going to be facing while they're out there sharing our roads. So, not sugarcoating it and not scaring them at the same time to sort of back off and say, I'm never going to be a pedestrian, but more empowering them to be aware of some of the dangers that are out there and give them solutions on how they can ensure that they're safe despite that. And then a secondary goal, but a still very important goal, would be that increasing children's pedestrian safety awarenesses when they're younger translates into a better, more aware future motorist, cyclist, and pedestrian that understands how to share the road safely. And then our really big goal for the program was to try and reach 50% of all the schools in Ottawa annually. That way, the students would get all 4 presentations over their whole sort of career in elementary school. All right. A few other highlights to the program. So I had mentioned about the revamp of the content in 2017. Our content was tired, it was stale, we had feedback from teachers, and students that, especially for the older students, it was kind of boring and repetitive. So we got together with a working group made up of representatives from the municipality, Ottawa Public Health, the busing consortium here in Ottawa, and some of our active transportation partners, Green Communities Canada being one of them. And it was actually Wallace who sort of highlighted to us something that was really neat that was going on in New York City that was developed by the Department of Transportation there, a safety education program where they were actually taking students out onto the streets with speed detectors and, having them record speeds and things like that and observe, poor road behavior. And so that sort of kicked it all off in terms of, we wanted this to be really exciting. We wanted it to be really cool and neat and something that students would look forward to doing and very experiential. So that working group, met over several months. We came up with a storyboard for the 4 different presentations. And then we sort of worked through making lesson plans, building presenter kits, and then being ready to launch it in the fall of 2017 to all of the schools. The program right now is available in both official languages, so we're able to reach students in all 4 school boards here in Ottawa. And 2019 was a banner year for the program. It really sort of hit its stride last year. We reached over 25,000 elementary students across Ottawa. Our presenters delivered over 1,300 presentations, and we nearly met our goal of 50% of the elementary schools in the Ottawa area. We did 103 of them. So we're really proud of that, and we're looking to continue that high that we're on with that and keep delivering the program. All right, so you're probably also wondering how we fund this. We're very lucky here in Ottawa that the municipality sees the importance of this sort of an education program around pedestrian safety. And like I said, it's been about a decade now that it's been a partnership between the Ottawa Safety Council and the City of Ottawa. Particularly the Transportation Services Department at the City of Ottawa, which is also the same department as the Adult Crossing Guard is run out of. It's actually built into our Adult Crossing Guard contract that we will also deliver pedestrian safety presentations in the schools. And I think that's pretty unique in terms of other municipalities across Ontario. We currently have funding for 125 presentation days per school year from the city. We bill them by day on a monthly basis, and we average about 6 presentations per day. We really try to ensure that if our presenter's going out to the school, that we're hitting up as many classes as we can. We don't go out, to just do one class here and there. If they're requesting it just for their JKs, we make sure that we offer it to the rest of the classes while we're out there. And then OSTA stepped in. OSTA is the Ottawa Student Transportation Authority here in Ottawa, and they're the busing consortium for the English school boards a couple years ago. And they said we were maxing out the funding from the city and having to put schools on waiting lists that wanted the presentation, and OSTA stepped up and offered to cover any overages from the city funding. And so in total, we have funding for about 236 presentation days per school year. And we do our best to max out both the city funding and the funding that OSTA has offered to us as well. So that's how we're paying for this. Now, just to review a little bit of what the actual curriculum entails. So we have 4 different modules I mentioned. They're all 30 minutes in length, except for the grade 5-6 one, which is 2 one-hour sessions, one out on the road and then one back in the classroom. And then each module builds on the one before it. So, concepts that were learned in the JKSK build a foundation for the grade 1-2 presentation, et cetera, et cetera. And at the start of each presentation, we do a little bit of a review from the previous one, just to sort of ensure that the students get that repetition in some of those lessons. And then we progress to more complicated concepts over the different modules. So in JKSK, it's really cool. We bring a rollout crosswalk. It's the size of an actual crosswalk that they'll encounter on the street. And students learn how to walk safely near traffic, how to cross the street safely. We do the 5 steps. We try to bring the street environment into them. So I have a little sound clip here, but I'm not sure if anyone can actually hear it. But we have traffic noises, things like car backing up or a truck backing up, emergency vehicle sounds, bicycle bells, that sort of thing. So we're trying to really recreate the outdoor street environment in the classroom. We use play-based learning, so they do a lot of practicing, looking and listening and practicing crossing the crosswalk. And the traffic lights are the highlights of the program. The kids just think those are so cool. So, you know, they get to learn. We have a pedestrian traffic light and a regular traffic light, the red, yellow, green one. So the kids get to, you know, actually practice crossing the street with the lights and the noises going on in the background and all that stuff. All right, leading up into the grade 1-2 curriculum, we do a little review, obviously, of things taught in kindergarten, but the focus on the grade 1-2 presentation is to see and be seen. So we really talk about things like visual barriers, making eye contact, and dressing to be seen when you're out walking. There's more practice on the crosswalk. However, we sort of flip it and we give them some role-playing scenarios where they're actually doing things wrong on the crosswalk, and other students have to identify what it is that they did wrong or that they did unsafely and how they would correct them. So to really get that the skills learned in JKSK, really cement those into their heads with critical thinking sort of scenarios. Now, in grade 3-4, this is where we start to introduce a little bit more abstract concepts such as right of way and distraction. We do a puzzle activity where students are instructed to do the puzzle as quickly as possible without distraction, and then we actually have them do it while we distract them every 10 to 15 seconds, and that's all to sort of lead them to the understanding of how distraction can affect attention and concentration, and that then we translate all of that back onto how does that affect you when you're actually out walking in terms of your concentration. How can that affect your safety if you don't pay attention to what you're doing? How can that affect your safety if drivers aren't paying attention to what they're doing, and what you can do to make sure that you're safe despite that. And then the grade 5-6 one is the really sort of cool one, in my opinion. This is where we actually take the students out onto the roads and they observe road user behavior. They collect data using a speed detector and observation, things like, do they see drivers that are texting? Do they see pedestrians that are jaywalking? Do they see cyclists that are wearing earphones? Things like that. So they collect all this data about their observations, and then we go back into the classroom and we review this data, and there's a field guide that they use, and it leads the students through exercises and some math and some graphs, some graphing exercises and things like that. And they figure out how to calculate stopping distance. And then the final activity in the field guide is an activity where they have to calculate the stopping distance of a driver who looks down at their phone for 1 second and see whether or not they will actually stop in time for the crosswalk, and they won't. That's what the conclusion that they come to. And it's really neat. I've been out to a bunch of these and just watched the students sort of the realization or sort of that sort of aha moment when they make that connection between the fact that that car that's driving 40 kilometers an hour along the road will take the entire length of the school gym to slow down once they see you. So really sort of making that whole thing about stopping distance and whatnot something that they can relate to. and then also relating it back to their safety and how they can be safe despite the fact that, you know, people are distracted and speeding and, you know, talking on the phone and that kind of thing. Now we have a few
Hi,
teaching
Kelly.
supports.
Yeah,
Hi,
Kelly.
yeah.
Yeah, it's Wallace. I just need to step in for a minute. We are just at 2 o'clock or slightly after.
Okay.
So I realize for lots of folks may have to start to lead the webinar, which we totally understand. I think Kelly's going to be wrapping up fairly soon, and we'll move into our Q&A. But just wanted to acknowledge for people that do have to leave. Again, we have recorded the webinar, and we will be sending that out as well as a copy of all of the slides in the near future. And we thank you for joining us. And back to you, Kelly.
Okay. Yeah, so we use a few different sort of teaching supports, PowerPoint presentations, videos. We've developed these really cool activities that we leave behind with the teachers. It encourages them to, you know, a week or two later to do a follow-up activity that's built around what the students learned in the classroom with our presenter. So for example, they might map out a route. They might go for a walk around the school and map out the safest route somewhere, you know, or point out hazards, things like that, as well as some materials that students can take home. It was mentioned earlier in one of the other presentations how parents are really key to students retaining and practicing these sorts of important life skills around road safety. So we send a material home that encourages parents to do that. The field guide's really neat that the students bring out, and they get to keep that afterwards with all their data filled out. The soundtracks that we use, you know, lots of props, and then the lesson plans are really built around question, answer, and reflection, rather than just sort of the presenter talking to the students. It's more of a conversation. Some logistics and best practices that we've learned over the years. So we use an online booking form for schools to book the presentations. They can choose, you know, their top 3 dates. They can put in the number of students, what classes they want done. In terms of promoting the program, because it's free, we generally get good uptake. You know, we promote it out in the fall and then again in the winter time. And if if we've got extra funding and you know there's extra days that we can deliver, we will, you know, target certain schools or, you know, call schools and ask them if they got the email and encourage them to sign up. But we really don't have to do too much of that. And we're hitting all the schools, not just those schools that are focused in on student travel planning. Seems to be a wide range, you know, whether they've ever done any sort of travel planning or not. They do see the value of having the presentations. We have 5 part-time presenters who sort of have a geographic zone that they work. So like east, west, south, north of the city. And then each presenter has a full kit. So they have, you know, everybody has a traffic light, a rollout crosswalk, all the materials, the radar detector, all that stuff, so that there's no need to sort of shuffle a kit around. We have a program coordinator, Rod. He spends 65% of his time, probably, I would say, scheduling these presentations. And so he does all the booking and scheduling with the schools. And the best way that he's found to do it is, you know, to check out what the school's daily schedule looks like, when their breaks are, when they start, when their bell goes in the afternoon, that sort of thing. And there's templates, you know, the different boards use different schedules, but there is some continuity amongst them. And then he actually sends a template that matches up with their bell times, and he has them fill it out. But he's already built into that 5 minutes between presentations and 10 minutes after the bells and lunch, just, you know, so that everyone can get settled. And then we don't confirm a booking or a date until we actually receive that back from the school filled out, that schedule. So that's sort of our, you know, way to sort of force them to deal with it, because it can get, you know, teachers and principals are busy and it can get pushed aside, you know, scheduling the pedestrian safety presentation. So we ask that we have the scheduling template filled out before we can say, yes, 100% will be there that day. Oops, I forgot to switch slides. Maximum 30 students per presentation. We found any more than that, they're just, you know, some students get missed. Not everyone's getting, you know, to practice as much as they want on the crosswalk, or, you know, to use the speed detector and whatnot. We send a reminder email out 2 to 3 days prior, because, you know, it does still happen. Our presenters show up and nobody was expecting them there, or nobody that's there currently knows what's going on. So we try to remind them. We prefer that the school allows the presenters to set up in one quiet area in the school. So whether that's a library, a gym, or, you know, a classroom, and access to a smart board projector and laptop is ideal. However, we do have flashcards if we do end up in a situation where we don't have that technology. And then because the crosswalk is quite heavy and the lights are heavy, parking is important as well for the presenter. And then we've tried it a few different ways in terms of getting feedback and evaluation forms back. We tried it with, you know, links to a survey monkey, paper forms, and what we found is the most effective in getting you know, 100, you know, it's close to 100% return on getting those evaluations back from the teachers that are watching the presentations, along with the students, is to just hand out a paper form at the start of the presentation, tell the teacher that you're collecting it at the end, and then they fill it out while they're watching. So we've got quite a good percentage in terms of how many forms we've gotten back and for feedback, and feedback has been largely positive. 100% of the schools would have us back for sure. You know, and we've gotten some good feedback too on ways that we can tweak and make the presentation smoother and better as well. And then there's a few just things, if you know, if you were to go out and do the grade 5-6 program in your community, some specific logistical things to think about for that. Obviously, having a high traffic intersection is important because they're collecting data. So we've kind of figured that about 15 vehicles an hour would be a good minimum so that they actually have some data to work with. Some schools require, or some school boards require permission forms to leave school property. We leave that up to the school to deal with, but we make sure that we remind them to collect that ahead of time. We send a copy of the handbook ahead of time so that the teacher can review the math in it if that's something that needs to be done. There is some, you know, calculating averages and whatnot, and we want to avoid students getting bogged down in the math part of it. We want to stay focused on what the outcome of doing all this math is, and that's obviously to give them an understanding of stopping distance and how distraction can affect that. Pencils and calculators will be needed for that portion, and then obviously dressing for the weather because we run the program all year round. So, you know, rain, shine, snow, we're out there, and the students need to be prepared to collect data. So, yeah, so that's some sort of logistics and best practices that we've found over time that have helped the program run smoothly. And we're, you know, always incorporating feedback and, you know, changes to road safety, infrastructure and whatnot, and updating, and we're hoping to continue this program successfully into the future. And we would love to have the school boards at some point make it mandatory. So that's sort of a long range goal of ours that we would love to see, is it's something that, you know, is just part of the curriculum, and it's expected that the schools book these presentations every 2 years. And then there's my contact information if you want to get in touch, if you have any questions or concerns, or check out our website. And that's all I have for you today.
Great. Thanks so much, Kelly.
Yeah.
If I could ask you just to take your slides down. So we are going to move into the Q&A. Again, we've still got almost 90 people still holding on with us here. I do apologize, we run over a bit, but a lot of great content and obviously a lot of interest in pedestrian safety education. So I'm at this point, I think I'm going to bring my colleague Selena in. I know a number of questions have been already asked and answered in the chat box, but Selena, I think you've also kept track of any that might have been missed. And
Correct.
I think there were a few questions that came in for Kelly as well. So this is an opportunity for her to answer those. Brevity would be great, Kelly.
Perfect.
Sorry,
I'll start off.
to...
I'll read the questions out loud for you, Kelly, and then if you could just answer them.
Okay, sure.
So you received a question about the traffic mat, and they're wondering what is the cost of the mat and where you purchase the rest of your items.
Yeah, so sourcing the materials has been a bit of a tricky thing. Basically, the mats I made myself. I bought rubber matting from a rug store online, and I painted. I got the dimensions of what a crosswalk, an actual crosswalk is, and we actually taped them off and painted them ourselves. They're quite heavy. We're looking for another solution. They're very, very heavy for the presenters to carry. So we're actually looking at maybe some sort of vinyl mat or something else that is not quite so heavy and cumbersome to carry around, but it's just a basic rubber mat that you'd buy from a rug store. The lights are from a place in the States. I can send out a contact for them. Yeah, that's the only place I've been able to find them where they're, you know, they're not so big and heavy that you can't carry them. These are like a smaller version of what is actually used in a traffic light, like on the road. So yeah, I can definitely send out the contact information for that company that makes the lights. And the speed detectors we got off of Amazon, they're actually for sports. So they use them to like clock the speeds of like baseball pitches and things like that, and slap shots. And I'm just trying to think what other materials there are that we use. Soundtrack we built, we had our communications person a few years ago built that soundtrack for us. We just took different noises and linked them together. I think those are the major parts of the equipment.
Thank you. Very creative, that mat idea. Very crafty.
Yeah, that was fun, painting those mats. They needed like 4 coats because the rubber like sucked the paint in. Anyways.
Yeah, so if you can just send us the contact information for the materials, we'll include them in our follow-up email. So on to the second question. When you were piloting various delivery models, did you ever try train the trainer with classroom teachers? And do you have any insights on this model?
We haven't done that yet, but that's something that we would really like to explore a little bit more, because we are getting requests for the program from places all over Ontario. And so creating some sort of train the trainer package is definitely on our sort of future goal list, so that we can share this program more widely.
Thank you. So another question, was your local law enforcement assisting in the speed detection, distracted drivers, etc.?
No, we actually just have the students go out with the teacher and the presenter, and with the little speed detector that we got off Amazon, it works pretty well. It's pretty accurate. And yeah, we don't have any law enforcement actually come out and help us with that. So, but it's interesting just to watch drivers. They actually will slow down when they see the kids with the speed detector aimed at them. So, yeah. But no, we didn't engage our local police in that.
Okay. So another question, do you collect feedback forms from students as well, or just teachers?
Just teachers at the moment, but that's a really good point. That's something we would like to incorporate into this program as well as our cycling program, is some sort of evaluation pre-presentation and then post-presentation to see if, just to see how effective our presentations have been in terms of teaching kids road safety skills. Because right now we don't really have a measurement that, we don't really know whether students are retaining these or how well they're retaining them and applying them in their lives after, the presenter's gone. So again, that's another sort of future goal for the program, is to do that sort of baseline data collection, and then their skills and awareness, and then a follow-up afterwards to sort of see what impact the presentation had.
Perfect, thank you. So we are past the time, but there was one question that was addressed to all of the presenters. So I think this one's a really interesting question that we should ask before we do end the webinar. So this was from Nancy Wirtz. She was wondering if any of the presenters have been able to determine the impact of the program in terms of more children walking. Do the parents have increased confidence in their child's abilities and are now letting them walk or wheel? So it's more of an open discussion to all of our presenters today.
So this is Leslie from Waterloo. We have not yet been able to perform any evaluation data that way, but we did have a comment from one teacher that said that a student of hers is now walking from a drop-off point because she feels it's safer crossing the familiar streets near the school. So anecdotally, we're hearing some positive things. Rather than being dropped off right in front of the school, she's moving a little further away, but no qualitative data yet.
Thank you, Leslie. Tara or Kelly, do you have anything else to add to this question?
I can't speak to it myself. We do work with the HEAL lab at the University of Western Ontario, and they certainly have been collecting data for a number of years for evaluation purposes. And I do know just recently they were awarded a grant, so they are going to be looking at some more focused evaluation for school travel planning. Because I have not been in that role for about a year, I just don't want to attempt to even speak on it. But certainly I would, and it looks like Andrew's sort of adding to this conversation now. We have shown that perceptions of safety improve after STP, but not tied directly to education. So certainly I would, for any more specific questions in regards to that, he is currently the co-chair for the Active and Safe Routes to School committee now, so he would be the one that you could ask those questions.
I don't have anything extra to add. It's something that we are very interested in trying to do in the future, collecting the data around how the presentations are influencing road safe behaviors, and we would obviously collect something around whether or not parents are more comfortable having their child walk after taking that. Yeah, so I think that's very interesting, and that's something that all programs should be trying to do, so that we have some of that data around it.
I agree. Thank you, Kelly. So those are all the questions for you, Kelly. If everyone else can still stay on the line, there was one question for Leslie and Annette. It was from Gabrielle. She was wondering, how do you address parent unfounded fears regarding predators or speeders?
Okay, I thought that question was for someone else, so I didn't answer it. But the parents haven't really expressed that through this program. We do hear those fears through our school travel planning committees and the work in individual schools that way. We have statements from our chief of police talking about how safe our community is, and we have data about the incidents, the number of incidents at school commute times to be able to provide for parents. But we also lean very heavily on the notion that there's safety in numbers, and we need more people on the streets and walking in order to increase safety. So that's what we are working towards in this program.
Great, thanks Selena, thanks Kelly, Leslie, Annette, and Tara for your presentations. We have gone well over our 60 minutes, but it's been a great webinar, and obviously generated a lot of questions. I want to thank all of our participants in the webinar as well, 55 of you that are still with us now. And just some information there on the screen for everyone in terms of how you stay in touch with us at Ontario Active School Travel. Our website address and our social media feeds are in the lower left-hand corner. And I expect many of you on the webinar today are already members of the Ontario Active School Travel Network. But if you are not and are interested in finding out more about our community of practice for AST practitioners, you can go to ontarioactiveschooltravel.ca/network to find out more. So thank you everyone for your time and your interest in pedestrian safety education. And we've come to the end of today's webinar. Thanks so much.